Happening now, after 3 decades on Florida's death row, Donald Dilbeck will be put to death by lethal injection at any moment. Dillbeck has been on death row since the 1990 killing of Faye Vann in the parking lot of the Tallahassee Mall. Our Katie Kaplan is live just outside Stark with more on how he arrived.
Charged of murder in the first degree.
It has taken more than 30 years for Donald Dilbeck to meet his punishment.
A majority of the jury, by a vote of 8-4, with what he characterized as an orange shirt, just watch him, leaning against one of the pillars about halfway down, wearing sunglasses.
After the deadly attack, Dilbeck was chased by a security guard, who he also tried to stab before being captured a short time. Dilbeck later confessing to the crime in court, saying he stabbed Faye Vann when she started fighting back.
She screamed. And then I go up to grab her, get my hair out of her hand, and she wound up biting me. And I just go off.
Dilbeck hoping the confession would save him from the death penalty.
The public thought he was locked away for good. After all, Donald Dilbeck was just 15 when he shot and killed a sheriff's deputy with the officer's own gun. A cold-blooded murder. Life without parole, the judge declared. Case closed. But the system didn't hold. Just 4 years later, Dilbeck slipped through the cracks, escaping prison. He was caught. Then years later, it happened again. Another escape. Another mistake. And this time, it ended in blood. June 24, 1990. A muggy summer afternoon in Tallahassee. In the parking lot of a bustling mall, 44-year-old Robbie Faye Vann sat in her car, running errands, living her life. She never saw the man coming. Dilbeck had stolen a knife and was looking for a way out. He tried to hijack her car. She fought back, and he stabbed her again and again until she collapsed in her seat, bleeding out. Her car crashed. Her life ended. He ran. Within hours, he was hunted down, tackled in someone's backyard, the murder weapon still in his hand. And across the state, outrage exploded. How could a convicted cop killer, serving life, be trusted outside prison walls? The Florida Department of Corrections was thrown into the spotlight. Not just for a murder, but for a failure. A failure of judgment. A failure of protection. A failure of a system designed to keep the public safe. For decades, Dilbeck sat on death row, silent, forgotten. Until 2023. That's when his name hit headlines again. His execution was scheduled. His final 24 hours began. But when he opened his mouth for the last time, it wasn't remorse that came out. It was rage. A blistering attack on Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. A final act of defiance from a man whose entire life had been a war against authority. Was he a broken boy who never had a chance? Or a violent manipulator who weaponized his pain? This is the story of Donald David Dilbeck, his crimes, his escapes, his victims, and the last day of his life. A day Florida will never forget. If this story left you stunned, if it made you question how justice works, and when it breaks, don't just scroll away. Like this video to help others find it. Subscribe for more true crime stories that dive deep, ask hard questions, and refuse to look away. And if you've got thoughts about the system, about the victims, or about Donald Dilbeck's final words, drop a comment below. We read every one. Let's talk about it. It was a warm spring night in 1979, and 15-year-old Donald David Dilbeck was sitting alone in a stolen Cadillac parked near the beach in Fort Myers, Florida. The engine was off. The park had long since closed. But the boy didn't move. He just sat there, thin, hollow-eyed, dirty from days of running. He had no home to return to, no family waiting for him, no future laid out in front of him. What he did have was a pistol hidden beneath the driver's seat, and the kind of rage that only builds after years of being discarded. A call came in, suspicious vehicle, lone figure inside. Deputy Dwight Lynn Hall, 31 years old, rolled up to check it out. He was calm, routine, doing his job. When he walked up to the window, Dilbeck took off running. Hall chased him. On foot, in the dark. They didn't know each other. But within seconds, their lives became locked together forever. A scuffle broke out. Dillbeck managed to wrestle Hall's service weapon from him. And just like that, 2 gunshots. Deputy Hall fell dead in the sand. Dillbeck was caught not long after. A kid, still in his teens, charged with killing a police officer. The state could have gone for the electric chair. Instead, the court sentenced him to life in prison. No parole. No second chances. But prison didn't keep Donald Dilbeck. 4 years in, he escaped. They caught him again. Gave him an extra year. Then, unbelievably, they moved him to a lower security facility. And in 1990, history repeated itself. Dilbeck walked away from a work detail at a vocational center. Just strolled off. Gone again. This time, he didn't stay quiet. He ended up in Tallahassee. Stole a paring knife from a department store. 2 days later, June 24th, he spotted a woman sitting alone in her car at the Tallahassee Mall. Her name was Robbie Faye Vann. She was 44, kind, unsuspecting. He approached fast, opened her door, tried to carjack her. She fought back. And he snapped. Dilbeck stabbed her again and again. 10, maybe 15 times. The car lurched forward and crashed into a tree. She died right there in the front seat. A mall security guard saw him run. At first, 911 calls reported a car accident. Then a stabbing. Then a foot chase through suburban backyards. He didn't get far. Police caught him hiding behind a house not far from the mall, covered in blood, still holding the same knife he used to kill her. It was all over in hours. But for the second time in his life, a woman was dead because someone had left a broken boy alone in the world with no boundaries, and no brakes. Years passed. Dilbeck sat on death row in Rayford, Florida, buried in a cell with nothing but time and silence. He was no longer the angry teenager who stole a gun and murdered a deputy. He was older now, softer in the face, but still unpredictable. And behind the steel doors, the guards all knew one thing. This man didn't fear dying. He feared rotting away. His lawyers fought the inevitable. They tried to paint a picture of a broken child, a boy tossed into a storm of foster homes, raised by an alcoholic mother, beaten down by life before he ever got the chance to stand up. They said his brain was damaged, that he had never developed impulse control, that prison failed him. But the court saw the knife. The blood. The woman gasping her last breath in her own car. In 1991, Dilbeck was sentenced to death for the murder of Robbie Faye Vann. He didn't argue. In court, he told the judge, "I'm really sorry for what happened. I wish it didn't. Not because I'm standing here, but because it happened." His voice cracked. Then he added, "I'm asking for a life sentence, not for my sake, but for my parents' sake." It didn't matter. His apology came too late. Too many lives had already been shattered. Outside the courtroom, the victim's family held each other, shaking. Their grief had turned to exhaustion. They had sat through the details, heard how Dilbeck stalked Robbie, how she screamed, how she bled out before help could reach her. A mother. A sister. Gone. Before he ever picked up a knife. Before he ever fired a gun. Donald David Dilbeck was just a boy nobody wanted. Let's talk about his background. He never had a good background, but as the popular saying goes, that doesn't excuse what you did. Because a lot of people grew up in worst environment, they didn't kill a cop of a woman of 44 years. Born on May 24, 1963, in Florida, he came into a home already broken. His father walked out when he was 6. His mother, drowning in alcoholism, wasn't far behind emotionally. He was passed around like a problem no one wanted to solve. Foster home to foster home, year after year. By age 15, he'd already lived in more houses than he could count, but none of them ever felt like home. No discipline, no direction, just a growing fire behind his eyes and a silence no adult ever stopped long enough to hear. School didn't stand a chance. He dropped out young, ran away often, and by his early teens, he was surviving off the streets, petty theft, car hopping, and sleeping wherever he could find shelter. People saw him as trouble. But underneath all that was a boy boiling with resentment, bitterness, and hurt that had hardened into something cold. He never learned how to manage rage, only how to obey it. By the time he was sitting in that stolen car in Fort Myers Beach, he was already a ghost, wandering, unmoored, angry. The kind of teenager who didn't just lash out. He exploded. And when Deputy Dwight Hall approached him that April evening, he didn't see a deputy. He saw a threat. A wall. Another man telling him what to do. That was all it took. By 15, Donald Dilbeck had taken a man's life. And after that, prison became the only place left that would claim him. But even behind bars, he couldn't sit still. The boy who was always running would keep doing just that, until the state finally stopped him for good. And still, the execution didn't come. For over 30 years, Dilbeck lived in the slow drip of death row life, watching as other inmates were led away and never returned. He spent the time reading, writing letters, getting into fights with guards. There were reports of defiance, disrespect, but also of quiet. Some said he mellowed with age. Others said the monster never left. He just got better at hiding. But in early 2023, the silence broke. Governor Ron DeSantis signed his death warrant. After decades of appeals, Dilbeck's time had finally run out. The clock was ticking, and Florida was ready to execute its first inmate in nearly 4 years. Dillbeck had just 30 days to live. The sun rose slowly over Florida State Prison on February 23, 2023, its orange glare cutting through the fog like a final warning. Inside the death house, time didn't move the way it did for the rest of the world. In here, it crawled. Every second was measured. Every breath was monitored. And for Donald David Dilbeck, this was the last morning he'd ever see. He had been moved into the death watch cell weeks earlier, just 15 feet from the execution chamber. That cell was colder, quieter. No cellmate. No distractions. Just a small bed, a stainless steel sink, and a window that looked out onto a hallway he'd never walk down again. The guards were different too. More distant. No jokes. No banter. Everyone knew what was coming. In those final days, Dilbeck received visitors. 2 spiritual advisors came. He declined a priest. No tears. No Bible-thumping confessions. But he did request quiet time. He wrote letters, some to family, one to a reporter. In them, he didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't plead for mercy. Instead, he seemed focused on settling his mind, drawing his own lines around the legacy he knew he couldn't erase. When the warden came to ask about his last meal, Dilbeck didn't hesitate. Fried shrimp, mushrooms, onion rings, butter pecan ice cream, pecan pie, and a large chocolate shake. It wasn't a feast. It was comfort. Something childish about it. As if he were reaching for a memory that didn't hurt. On the morning of the execution, the prison went into lockdown. No movement, no noise. Extra guards were posted. At 4:30 p.m., Dilbeck was offered the chance to shower. He refused. At 5 p.m., he changed into a clean pressed uniform. No shackles. Just 2 guards, one on each side, walking him slowly toward the death chamber. He didn't look back. By 6 p.m., witnesses were seated behind the glass. On one side, members of Robbie Faye Vann's family. On the other, reporters scribbling notes. The lights were bright. The air was cold. And behind the glass, the gurney waited, still, sterile, and final. At 6:06 p.m., Donald Dilbeck was strapped down, arms out. And 4 was placed in each arm. He turned his head toward the window. Then came the unexpected. He looked straight at the witnesses and unleashed one of the most defiant last statements Florida had ever heard. "I know I hurt people when I was young," he said. "I really messed up. But I know Ron DeSantis has done a lot worse. He's taken a lot from a lot of people. I speak for all men, women, and children. He's put his foot on our necks. Ron DeSantis and other people like him can suck our dicks." The room went dead silent. 6 minutes later, Donald Dilbeck was dead. Donald David Dilbeck died at 6:13 p.m. on February 23, 2023. He was 59 years old, strapped to a gurney in Florida's death chamber, his veins full of lethal chemicals. He didn't beg. He didn't cry. He cursed the governor with his last breath. But the truth. This story was over long before the poison hit his bloodstream. His life had been circling the drain since childhood, one abandonment after another, no anchor, no guidance, no help when it might have mattered. And yet, none of that excuses what he became. A murderer at 15. A fugitive twice. And a killer once more before the state finally caught up to him. His victims never got second chances. Deputy Dwight Hall never went home that night. Robbie Faye Vann never finished her errand at the mall. 2 families left with holes that never healed. Dillbeck spent 32 years on death row, watching seasons change through concrete bars. In the end, no legal miracle saved him. No apology erased the blood he spilled. Just silence, the hum of fluorescent lights, and a cold table waiting to finish what started decades ago. He may have wanted his final words to make a statement. But when the drugs stopped his heart, they didn't echo. They disappeared. Like him. Another number. Another name in the ledger. And just like that, the cycle closed.